Hi, I'm Edric,
And I'm Joy.
and we're here to help you.
Get it right from the start.
So we have Bernard and Ivy here, and just seeing them again, it's like time has frozen, and they have not aged. We were saying, right? But the reason why we're delighted to have them here is because in many ways they've been heroes to us, and we want to just say that to everybody that's watching here. You all need to have heroes, people who you look to, people who will help make sure that you're not alone. So thank you for being that in our life. We want to start off with that,
You are
and that's
the hero.
that's why we're here, right? So
I think that you're being really modest actually in the way you're
Yeah.
describing them. No, because Bernard and Ivy Marquez, for those who don't know, are one of the original homeschoolers in the
oh
Philippines.
geez,
Like back in the 90s.
Makes us so old.
No,
that's
no.
why I said
No.
time was
What's
frozen,
your
right?
secret? You
doesn't
look so young. And so I think people need to understand that this was really radical to do back then.
Yeah.
A little crazy,
Yes.
actually.
There were no co-ops.
Yes.
No one knew about it.
No internet.
Our
no
relatives
internet.
our relatives
That's
are
right.
saying we're out of our mind.
Oh my
But yet,
goodness.
here they are. Now they coach families. They come alongside families, not just in homeschooling, but marriage, parenting, business. So they have a company called, let me get this right.
180 degree north. No, but
180
what's interesting is how Bernard likes to describe himself. He's always been
A word
very
weaver.
creative, right? I've known him to be this way. If you look at his LinkedIn profile, I've introduced you personally, but professionally, he likes to be the terms coined: people scientist, relational chemist, executive coach, strengths advocate. That I can relate to. But the first two, and we were saying off cam, we could spend a whole episode just talking about what these are. But that's how I want to introduce Bernard professionally. In many ways, he is a consultant for consultants. He does a lot of amazing things in that space. Maybe you want to introduce Ivy a little bit more on the professional side.
Sure. She's also a consultant for their company. I mean, she does consulting for companies also. And I would call her the ultimate mind mapper.
Please show. Please show.
I said,
Look at this right
Ivy,
here.
did you bring a mind map to this to this dialogue? And she did. I mean, that's how her brain works. That's how she thinks. And she's really helped so many parents, especially parents who I think along the way wanted to give up with homeschooling, and she would really come alongside them. Because unlike many people, Bernard and Ivy homeschooled from 0 through high school back then, which is really unusual.
Right.
So we really just really, really appreciate them. We wish we could have gotten together more, but since the pandemic,
Yeah.
this is probably the first time we really sat down.
First time.
Yeah,
Yes.
first
I know.
time. Yeah, since.
In a while. Oh my
So-
goodness. Yeah. And we could have, 10 episodes just talking about different things, because there's so many things that you can pour into the lives of all the families and parents that are here. I mean, we can just go on marriage alone. We were saying earlier, but this is not a marriage podcast. So let's go straight into it. What makes this very special is, again, the track record, if you will. I mean, your children are not in their 5-year-old preschool. They're done. Right. And you were already telling how they're in various parts of the world. So maybe you can give a quick flash update. Where are they now? What are the three doing from your lenses?
Get it.
Right. Let's do that. Go ahead.
All right. Today's 2024.
Correct.
33 years of
Oh
marriage.
my goodness.
3 kids.
Yes.
2 grandkids.
That's amazing.
And we are now in the space where we are actually revisiting everything that happened in a blur for the past 14, 16 years of homeschooling. And then now we're trying to remember what were the highlights and what were the low points, what were the regular things that we do, what were the rituals that we were always coming back to. Now we have a grandson who is about turning 2. So we're now picking it back up and saying, Ivy, I think this is another season for you to get back into the whole game of homeschooling and trying to figure out what worked before, because we actually run on two things. We're trying to figure out what worked and what matters. And so the whole thing of our homeschooling, the very reason why we went there is because we're trying to figure out what will work, preparing these kids when they throw their togas on the day of graduation. Will they be ready? So that was the question. Will the traditional school, will our old traditional parenting make it? And so now that we have our grandson and granddaughter, we wanted to now make sure we're able to pass it on to our children what we did on the education side, not just the parenting.
And so you said you wanted to see if after they threw off their togas, if it all worked. Did it work, Ivy?
I think so. I'm seeing them now and how they raise their children. Just like what Bernard is saying, I felt like we needed to give back to community, maybe tell them about our journey as well, what works, what matters, what didn't work, how we can help them ease up a little bit on parenting and be able to really do home education, because I really believe it's one of the basic things that God has created to actually bring families closer. I really believe that. To a point, that's our advocacy now. I believe in Malachi chapter 4, where in the last days I will turn the hearts of the parents to their
Fathers to
children,
their children, yeah.
and the children's hearts to their parents, or else there will be a curse in the land. And if you take a look at that verse, it actually says that is a curse when the fathers have turned away and the kids have turned away from their parents as well. And we said, when I was homeschooling, it actually turned our hearts together to a point. Our children are so close. We are so close to each other. We're always talking to each other now that they're grown ups. We love to be each other's company. In the pandemic, we were really bonded. After the pandemic, we're still together. That for me is a treasure. That for me spells success as a parent. When your children want to go back to you,
That's amazing.
To still be with you.
want to
hang out.
console
And they
you.
want to be with you.
Yeah.
Because one of those things that we would try to figure out, do we want to really be parents who are so good about framework, techniques, principles, and all of these jargons for parenting, but they didn't really want to be with you? And so we want to make it work. We want to figure out what will they regularly see, that they'll be caught and they will be in love more with God. And what they will see in us, that they'll say, it's working for them. They are simple people, but I think they figured out what it spells like to make this life all work out. And we were talking about in our family about the meaning of success and how a lot of people define that. And so success is basically, for us, is really not a word where you gather a mass of things, a lot of things like recognition,
Wealth,
or even wealth,
money,
or even
fortune.
accolades, friendships, right? But it's basically being able to fulfill the purpose and destiny that God gave you in a very fun way, in a life-giving way.
Yeah.
And so our family, if there is one thing that we'd want to zero in, is I want to make sure it works, which will guide us, but I want to also make sure we're having fun as we do it.
That is very interesting. It's the first time I actually hear the word
Yeah.
fun in the fulfillment of God's plan. And so there's so much to dissect there. Let's talk about what does that look like practically, right? When you say fulfilling God's plan,
Yeah.
and then let's talk about fun.
Yeah.
So let's do fulfilling God's plan. What does that look like from your lenses?
All right.
And bring us to the point where we can get to see, for those listening and those watching, what the three are doing now.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So as a parent, you have an agenda. Your agenda is make sure they're safe. Before our whole goal is, we want you to love God, you want to worship God. But I realized, looking back at decades of reviewing our parenting, the first thing we did is make sure they're still alive. They don't.
That's important, guys.
They don't eat the marbles. They don't cross the street. They
Safety.
listen.
Yeah,
Safety
okay.
first.
Yeah.
And then they go become responsible. Then responsibility.
I wish we'd listened to you because our son did swallow a marble.
Put one up his nose. I mean, there's various versions of that.
You know, this is one of the
safeties.
things, one of the greatest things that homeschool did to us, and one of the things that we appreciated about homeschooling, our kids never even had to be rushed into the hospital. Never had to stay 3 days for their growing up years. I mean, by the grace
That's a
of
blessing,
God.
yeah.
But not everybody's going to have that, I'm sure. There will be cases, there will be different scenarios. But safety is first. Second is responsibility. The third is, for us now, is spirituality. Because when you teach them God before they put their clothes back, normally they'll put their clothes back, put the hampers, close what you open, right? Those are the small things. Then later on, you layer it with the spirituality, then community. So those are the four agendas of my agenda. But how do you do that? That it doesn't come to them as, here goes again, he has agenda.
That's a great question.
He's teaching me again. How do you create fun? And they will love those four. They will love God and love you while in the midst of your waking hours to sleeping hours.
Yeah.
So then you realize it is a mind-wrecking many times, but you've got to make sure there's humor, there's more thought that you put into like what you do at home.
Yeah.
There's because Ivy's the one homeschooling most of the time, and she's got the curriculum, she's got the individual pace, all of those stuff. So I will come in as a principal to bring life
Fun
in.
one.
Okay, today break time. Okay, today we have budget. Let's go out. All of those mini breaks, mini moments, which I realized that's what they remember.
Yeah.
And I'm not minimizing, but I really wanted to highlight the regularity of the routine that Ivy set. Because if you don't have regularity or routine in the home, there's no structure. The kids are just running up now. There's no responsibility. There's no attentiveness. But she did that. But I think the role of the husband, or sometimes the husband will be the structured ones, but somebody in there must make sure fun is there, life is there, happiness is there. Because without that happiness, I mean, you don't want to come to a home that looks like a factory.
Ivy, can you give some specific
Or a
fun
military
things
base.
that you can? Oh, wait, you're the military base now.
No.
She's saying it shouldn't look like a
It
military
should not look. So
base.
tell me some specific fun things so people can latch onto this and apply that you remember, especially the most memorable ones.
Yeah, like I remember. So I'd like to put structure because I homeschool our children, but I don't want people saying that, they can do anything that they want because I'm preparing them for the real world. So I want them also being able to meet other people, be
good.
able to go into the workplace with professionalism, not going there with their hairs disheveled. So I said, we need to balance that. But we realize the fun makes it memorable. And it's their language. If you want children to really learn, it has to be fun. It should be play-based. So I remember like there was a time putting clothes into the hamper was really a difficult thing. It was just there already. I put a basketball court already in front. And so I made lots of games for that. Like I remember I told them, only snakes leave their skin on when they had to shed
When they
off their
molt, yeah.
skin, right? So you look like a snake if you actually leave your clothes that way. So the next time I see that, I think I'd let you slither with
the
your
floor.
clothes to the hamper. You know what? They loved the idea.
They started slithering with their
They're
clothes.
slithering with their clothes.
So 2 in 1. So we had a clean floor and a clean hamper.
But they remember that. Actually, we got the point. And so I think creativity needs to be there. But being married to him, it balanced me as well. Because I'm the type that who would put all these kinds of
Structure.
structure and make it a military camp. But he balanced me there.
I think what you're saying is so important. I think a lot of times as parents we miss that because we're so overly focused on the spirituality, their spiritual growth.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a joyful home,
Right.
if they don't see the joy of the Lord in your
Right.
interactions and just like the environment, what will make them think
That's true.
that God is a good God and
Yeah.
God is somebody I want to love and follow?
And you could argue that the joyfulness is part of the spiritual process. I mean, right?
Right.
It's like
Yes.
the joy of the Lord is
That's right.
a joyful heart is good medicine, right? I mean, we can say that. So this is super fun hearing all these things. So your children are now, you have an amazing tech startup guy who we will be talking with in a little bit. You have
A doctor.
a doctor, right? As the youngest. And then the middle one, she is was she in brand? I think that
She's
was the
in
last
brand
thing.
marketing. She's
Okay.
like the people person in the amongst the three.
She's like you.
So
Oh, yeah. Our strengths are pretty much the top five similar.
Similar.
Top five strengths.
how did you help them figure that out for themselves? Did you play a key role, or was that really all them and you just
No, yeah, maybe
them forward?
because I remember listening to one of your seminars, which was so good. I learned a lot. I wish I'd listened to it
earlier?
earlier on, but you talked about strengths-based parenting.
Yeah.
I know you're Gallup certified
Yes.
or Strengths Finder,
Yeah.
and you teach people all about that. But you've taken it to the context of parenting your children and raising a family. So could you simplify that for parents? Like, how does that play out? Strengths-based parenting.
Even I think before we got into Gallup's Strengths Finders, I think one of those parenting seminars we attended to back then was saying you have to figure out the bents and the interests of your kids, where they're good at, where they normally are strong in, or where they normally would be interested on. And so having that base and then having a technology now that you have an algorithm for knowing what people are good at using strengths finders, it just gives you like a blood chem report. Like when you have a blood chem, you figure out what's your stats, right? Now this one gave us, knowing their top five, gave us how they think, feel, and most likely how they do things. And so when I saw how David's top strength is ideation plus futuristic, and then he has a strategic mind, I realized no wonder you're into tech and no wonder you have so much penchant for technology, gadget, and what is to come. And he's always talking about what is not here.
He sees it.
He sees it.
Yeah.
And we're like,
Sounds a bit like his father, I think.
yeah. And so me as working on ideation, I could relate to him. And so that became our bond, especially in the times when he would get stuck with some things in his life. And then so we'd use that strength and move into brainstorming into how he can actually overcome those stuff. For my second, it's a no-brainer. I mean, knowing her that she's people person, the problem now is how do you now, because when you become a parent, you want to become watchman of the dangerous things of what people can bring. But also you realize there are strengths that they have that you need to validate, and you need to give them freedom or leeway to experiment on. And that's the hard part sometimes. That's where the trust part is. When you know the strengths of your kids, you don't want to be fear-based because there will be times they will fall. I mean, David, before he became good at his company now, he did two companies, or two companies that he started that did not really make it. And his resilience was like, Dad, you've got to learn how to fail fast. Oh no, I don't want to do that. When I was a kid, that's a bummer for me.
Yeah.
But for them, it's a game. Failing fast is a game for them.
I remember you were talking about how he used to actually do gaming as a
Yes.
child.
Yes.
And some parents would get so concerned and be worried about that. But you both saw it as something positive, I'm imagining, because I remember you mentioned something. You said that a lot of times as parents, we have a negative bias and our tendency is to look for and look at the negative. And so, like, let's say a parent will see their child being so into, let's say, gaming,
Yes.
and the first thought they'll have is, oh my gosh, my child might not amount to anything. They might be addicted to this. And so how did you navigate that? Because this is a real issue that parents face.
You want to answer that?
We had an open mind. I said, what is it that they're getting from gaming? And how is it stimulating them? And I realized it's his mind, it's his creative mind. And so we had some parameters. I remember I'll ask him to put his computer where he's facing everyone so that there would be accountability. We put some boundaries, and of course a lot of conversations about what parents fear about gaming, that you go into it and forget about your responsibility. So he knew that. And so, and there were times that he'll be allowed for about an hour, 2 hours. I just don't know what you may ask him now if he's still doing it, but it wasn't, in other words, we trusted him. We worked on trusting the person rather than being a police and cutting those off without any idea, because he can do that behind our back if he didn't understand what it was about. So a lot of that, we also had to mature and grow with him, because just like now, I wouldn't understand a lot of what's happening with the YouTube world and all that. But I as a parent, if I want to influence, I guess the biggest point that we want here is that I want to be still able to influence my child. If they think that we're already obsolete and they think that, my mom and dad will never understand this, they'll shut off.
It's very good.
And not even open up to you anymore. So we're protecting that. I said, I want to be still somebody that my children would look up to, say, my parents understand me. And we have this conversation. I can be vulnerable to my parents.
So I have a question related to this, right? So how do you balance? Because obviously you had to have a great relationship with David to trust him and for him to be at a point where he could take responsibility for his actions and regulating himself, which a lot of young people are not able to do, let's be honest. So how did you balance that? Like making sure that your relationship with your children was really great, and then giving them that trust. Was there a certain age where you felt like, okay, they've proven themselves responsible in certain areas or certain, what was it that you saw, and then you said, okay, we'll give them their space.
I remember one of the things I said was, why would he spend his time there? Is that the only thing that he's able to do after our homeschool? And I realized it went back to me because I was not offering an alternative. In other words, he was bored. And that's the only thing he can do in the house. And mama doesn't want to move out of the house and bring him out there. So I said, there's something lacking, and I think I need to provide a good alternative so that he'll see the world. If I didn't do that, he'll just be in his room the whole day. So we had to go to the sports club. We enrolled him to all the sports activities, etc., etc. So we brought him out of that cave, in other words.
I think we call that analog time, right? Like the things you do outside of the digital world.
But that's such a good point, because a lot of parents will say, no, you can't do that. And they'll take it away, but they don't provide
alternatives.
An alternative.
Very good.
And I always tell them, the alternative is, well, first of all, I think you are the best alternative if you engage your children and you have fun with them, as like you were saying, Bernard. But then you looked for things that he could also possibly be interested in.
Now, I want to go on and ask maybe 3-4 hours worth of other stuff, but I need to wind down and ask one last question, and then we'll have a conversation with your son, who we've just talked about now. Was there any self-doubt? Was there any moment where you're like, oh no, are we doing the right thing here in the parenting or in the homeschooling? Especially this was 90s, right? As you said, no internet, all those things. So I'd love to get your thought and your honest response to that. And how did you cope?
Can I answer that? And then you can actually pick it back up. Every year, especially when the years were getting higher for homeschooling, every year at about maybe November, December, Ivy would say, "Oh, I'll bring them to regular school already." I think I've already exhausted my patience and my knowledge for it. But you know what? And then I'll go for a conversation with Ivy and process her and realize, is this really what you want, or are you just tired? That more than self-doubt, it's really the tiredness or the accumulation
Yes.
of the maybe restless nights, because there are three kids, one after the other every 2 years.
And,
So
and a lot of times,
tiring.
no helpers.
No helpers.
Yeah.
And so it's becoming at some point becoming the mommy monster. And then you become the tired monster. And then now you realize, oh, you are a beautiful monster. You're this lovely mother.
I love that.
That is not really, you're taming the monster inside, which is sometimes creepy. The anger, the frustration, the big emotions. Not the monster that we think of, but it's really those moments where you feel like, am I really gonna produce? Not because we are not really doubting about whether they're gonna make it in the real world. The minute we engage them at about grade 2, grade 3, we know already this will prepare them and get them ready for the real world. More chances, because one, I realize now, I never used my TOR or my transcript of records to any of my companies I worked for. Never. No need for those numbers. And one of the things we realized is grade slavery is one of those things we got freed from.
Grade slavery. I
Grade
love
all
that.
these new words.
slavery,
I
man.
told you, the creative guy.
I mean, the average grade at the end of the school year, where they rank in the social pecking order, we realize it doesn't matter. What matters is, are they ready with the skills for life? Do they know how to navigate, how to make money, how to make friends, how to keep their commitments, how they will wake up tomorrow and excited for work?
Character.
How will they sleep at night early and get ready for what's up ahead? And all of these makes us really excited for the day. And so it removes all the tiredness.
Love all that. Ivy.
During the first years of their lives, I'd always doubt myself and say, what did I put myself into? What did I do with my children? Is this still reversible? But, asking the why, the big why, is very important. I ask that from us and of course from God. Why am I doing this? What is the purpose? There are better schools really that are equipped to actually bring my children, but I saw the big benefits of this. And I would look at those benefits. Number one, I'd look at why I'm doing this. What are the good things that can come out of it? And I'm sure all your guests have already talked about the different benefits of homeschooling. And I would also look at improving how I can do it with the teachers. One of the basic things I did was go to a real school. I sat in the Master's Academy, the real school, and I watched the teachers do it. And I said the teachers with 20 students can actually manage these students perfectly, and the teacher's smiling and she has all that voice. How can I not when I just have 3 children and I can do that? So I studied. To this day, I'm studying. To this day, I'm going to school trying to study how do children learn and how can I, because my why is that I want to influence them with my faith, with my values, with what we believe in. So I said, I have this very powerful message that I want to bring to the heart of my children. This better work. I think I threw the net already, maybe grade 3, 4, 5. I said, this better work. Yes, I would get tired. I that's another thing. I'm aware when I'm tired, that when I need to take a break, when my strength is low, my faith is low, I become a monster, and I'm aware of that. So I think of ways to actually get out of that. So there is an awareness.
I love this.
And self-management that needs to happen. In fact, I grew because of this. I think my character really grew because of homeschooling.
Wow. I love that. I love that why, and that resonates very strongly with me. And I think we're going to close on that note. The why will help us go through the what
Yeah.
and the how. So even if you might be listening and you're doubting, your parenting or your homeschooling or both, right? Go back to that. So thank you for sharing that. We will have a part 2. In the meantime, we're going to have to pause and end this episode. Again, I'm Edric,
I'm Joy.
and we're here to help you
Get it right from the start.